Hello, my dear friends. Today is April 29th, and you're on the Sanya in Florida channel. As always, here's a news update from the Ukrainian Front. Today we'll go over the map and cover the news segment. Well, let's start with the fact that we have 280,000 subscribers on Maxi. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to Maxi. Be sure to subscribe and don't unsubscribe from Telegram. I hope that both social networks will work for the greater good, so to speak. Well, let's get straight to the content. We'll start with the USA, then smoothly move on to Ukraine and go along the line of contact. Let me introduce you. Here before you is a lecturer in biochemistry at Oxford University. This wonder is called Matt Ratley. Well, what can I say? A biochemist definitely knows how to grow a beard, go bald, and get huge boobs. All at the same time. He must have done some biochemistry experiments, something like that. Wonderful. Now, moving on to an old British rat named Karl came to Congress in the USA. Here he is on your screen. You know, Rat Karl. First of all, he didn't pay any attention at all to any problems in Britain or the USA. Rat Karl came with only one goal, and that was to drag the United States of America into a war with Russia over Ukraine. That was the sole purpose of Rat Karl's visit. Rat Karl, she's old, you understand. An old rat, old rats, it doesn't matter. She's already lived out her time, accordingly. But nevertheless, old rats really love to sit by the fireplace, sip whiskey and watch the battlefield, seeing how millions of people die there. At the same time, old rats usually get something out of it. A little something from the military budget, you see, they like that, and that's why old rats act this way. They operate like this. As they say, the rat is old, she doesn't care anymore. Now, moving on to Ukraine, another round of conversations from the organized crime group named after Zelensky. Today, new, very juicy details have been published about what these people were talking about. And there's a certain Vova mentioned there explicitly. Who could that be? You know, who's Mindich's buddy over there? There's a Vova like that? Maybe Vladimir Putin. No, of course not. It's Vova Zelensky. He's the leader of the organized crime group who was siphoning off hundreds of millions of dollars from the budget. And basically there is direct evidence of this appearing in the recordings. What exactly is there? They're discussing the construction of luxury mansions in the Dynasty Cooperative in Kozyn near Kiev. In a conversation between Mendik and a woman named Natalia, who apparently is overseeing the construction. The conversation is from July 1st, 2025. It features the same four musketeers. That's Mindich, that's Alexei Chernyshov, the former deputy prime minister, who also got involved in a corruption scandal. Andrei and Vova. Naturally, Vova is Volodymyr Zelensky. Well, you get it. And Andrei, that's right. Andrei Yermak is the former head of the president's office. Let's break down some specific and interesting phrases from that conversation. Andrei is handling the facades, Chernyshov is taking care of everything between you and Vova and the fence. This is Natalia describing the work process. Next, they discuss planting trees at Vova's place and between Timur and Vova. The fence between militias and Vova's plots has already been partially concreted. They talk about pools, facades, electricity, security, and so on. Thank you. Well, I'm happy for these friends. The four friends will simply be able to visit each other through the gate. They can come over, meet up, and so to speak, discuss how cleverly they deceived the Ukrainian people. Wonderful. Alright, let's move on. Now, Umerov is our Minister of Defense. He is also directly connected with Menik, Vova, and Andrei. They all acted together. You see? Another conversation is being published there as well. This time it's Umerov and Menik talking. That is, they're having, as you know, these informal conversations. They are very old and close friends, absolutely. In other words, Mindich is basically talking to Umerov as if he is a subordinate. In a way, Umerov is reporting to him, explaining how he can help steal as much money as possible. That's the kind of dialogue they're having. Let's start with the company Firepoint. It's a very large manufacturer of all kinds of weapons. Missiles, long-range drones, and so on. So it turns out that everyone is in on it, all of them. Medic complains about delays in funding. In other words, the money isn't coming in, you see. He complains that there's not enough money, asks the financier to allocate more, yes. Medic, accordingly, completely denied that he has a stake in the company. But according to these conversations, his stake in the company is obvious. In fact, he owns this company, Firepoint. Next, the sale of Firepoint shares to foreign investors is discussed about 33%. For $600 million. And here, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine and Mendich are directly discussing that the profits from this sale, they will simply split among themselves. You see, among the shareholders. You know, they're selling companies right now. And $600 million is simply being stolen. You see, just like that. Well, our guys worked hard, earned it. Good for them. They're real champs, honestly. $600 million goes straight into their pockets. That's exactly what this is about. Yes, indeed, they said, well, part of it will go towards development, but the main portion will go to the shareholders. So that's Umerov and Medic. Really good for them. Next, substandard bulletproof vests. Remember, there was a scandal about supplying substandard bulletproof vests to the Ukrainian army. There, Umerov, of course, denied everything. He said, I have nothing to do with this. I wasn't involved in any way. So they're discussing this as well. Mentish mentions his own investment of $300 million and asks for help with the acceptance and payment for the deliveries. In other words, the bulletproof vests didn't pass the tests, and accordingly, they were rejected. Yes, they won't be accepted accordingly. But here, Umerov, the Minister of Defense and Mindish's buddy, steps in. He agrees to help with a phone call and by giving orders to his subordinates, including the head of the procurement agency, Arsen Zhumandilov. Isn't that just wonderful, huh? Specifically, Mindich and Umerov are supplying substandard body armor here and splitting the money between themselves, you see? Just perfect, they're saying it outright. All the discussions about these projects are happening together with Vova, you understand? Moving on, there's a certain Masha involved. They're discussing payments there, Masha's salary. Apparently, Masha is getting paid very well. $20,000 straight from the Ministry of Defense budget. Right into her pocket, in envelopes, you see? Masha, let me explain who she is. Maria Dotsenko, or Maria Vasilyevna Dotsenko. What does Masha do? She handles accordingly, solving problems and working with foreign investors in the interests of Mindich's circle, lobbying for the necessary decisions. Masha is on the payroll. So basically, this is how this criminal group operated. They would find people responsible for certain decisions. Then these people would be put on the payroll. Masha, for example, they were paid $20,000 in cash in an envelope that is from the Ministry of Defense budget. And these people, for that money, would solve all sorts of problems, so that Mindich, Zelensky, Andriy Yermak, and all the others could simply pocket more money. That's how this criminal group operated. Wonderful. And all of this is everything is recorded on audio and Vova is discussed, and together they are building huge mansions right next to each other so they can walk through a gate between them. In other words, these people really intended to live out the rest of their lives like this, rolling in luxury. Here's the question. Why would they want to end the war? Why would they want the war to end? Yes, they absolutely don't need it to end. The war, they absolutely don't need it. Look at this. They're just rolling in cash. You see, they're discussing how to split $600 million. You understand? Here, they pay salaries of $20,000 to all sorts of people who are needed, people who make the right decisions in their favor, in favor of their companies, their controlled people, and so on. This is just an ordinary organized crime group. And who is at the head of this criminal group? Vova? At this point, it's just negative. You'd have to be a complete idiot not to understand what's really happening in Ukraine. Just as I promised you, everything is exactly as I said. At the very beginning of the special military operation, I said that the Ukrainians would steal everything. And in fact, they did steal all the aid that came from the US. Well, not all of it, probably 2/3, at the very least. Just wonderful. I liked it. Now let's talk about a difficult topic for Russians. Of course, that's the oil refineries and the strikes on Tuapse and Perm. Today, Perm was added to the list again. It got hit once more. Let's start with Tuapse. So, there have already been 3 strikes there. The first strike was on April 16th. That was the first attack. Hit a major fire at the storage tanks and the terminal. They were putting out the fire for several days until April 19th. An oil slick appeared in the sea, covering an area of 10,000 square meters. The pollution is quite serious. On April 20th, there was a second attack. Another hit, another fire broke out. They were extinguishing it until April 24th, 5 days. Many storage tanks were damaged or destroyed. Here, of course, Ukrainian sources might be lying. But according to them, they claim that 24 storage tanks were destroyed and 5 were damaged. I suggest everyone take a look at the satellite images and verify all this. The data might be inaccurate. Next, casualties, including civilian deaths. Drones were being shot down there, something fell, someone was killed. Oil rain, severe pollution. Next, on the night of April 28th to 29th, this is a new, already the third attack by Ukrainian UAVs in the past 2 weeks. Here, as you can see, something happened and the fire is absolutely massive and out of control on your screen. That's what's happening there. A state of emergency has been declared in the area. Burning oil is spreading through the streets and destroying residents' private property. Next comes the evacuation of residents. There is a spill of fuel oil and petroleum products into the sea and river. The oil slick in the Black Sea is growing. There are slicks already floating far from the shore. In other words, the pollution is quite serious. There are problems with water in the city. More than 30 streets are without water supply. The oil refinery is now heavily damaged and production has stopped. Today, Perm has been added to this as well. Once again, Ukrainian UAVs attacked the key Transneft station, LPDS Perm. You can see on your screen that a strike occurred and a major fire broke out. The sky over Perm was covered with thick black smoke. Local residents are already reporting an oil rain. Broadly speaking and taking everything into consideration, when we look at the overall situation from a wider perspective, what can be said here? Ukrainian UAVs are already They regularly break through the defense systems of the Russian Federation because there are a lot of UAVs and because the system was not designed to destroy hundreds of targets. There simply aren't enough missiles for this on a daily basis. You see, the air defense works, it can shoot down many targets, but just not enough. But here the Ukrainians have simply started launching drones by the hundreds, and every day at that, and these drones were supplied to them. By whom? The Europeans? Yes, I already explained to you how it all works. Just Germany alone agreed to supply 10,000 long-range strike drones this year alone. Do you understand? Accordingly, the Ukrainians are supplied with drones. Very well. And now all these hundreds of thousands of drones are flying into Russia. And accordingly, they break through the Russian air defense system because there simply aren't enough missiles to shoot them all down. That's what's really happening. Now let's move to the map of the Ukrainian front. Let's talk about what has happened in the last 24 hours. We'll start with the settlement of Sopich. Here, Russian forces have taken control of it. 2 additional pieces of geolocated evidence have arrived. There is an expansion of the area under control in the settlement in the Sumy region. The advance in the Sumy region is up to 600 meters. According to archival video, this is approximately from March 26th. On your screen is the frontline position of residential buildings in Sopich under fire from the Ukrainian armed forces. In other words, we are adjusting the map to ensure accuracy. Let's move on. Zemlyanki, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Here it states that Zemlyanki, they have taken it under full control. Here it is, this settlement. So far there has been no geolocated evidence. But as a result of intensive actions, units of the Sever military group have established control over the settlement of Zemlyanki in the Kharkiv region. Statement from the Ministry of Defense. For now, let's wait for geolocated evidence. Now, Kurilovka, the military town. From here, this is already the Kupiansk area. 2 geolocated materials have come from here at once. At these 2 points, Russian positions on this section of the front are confirmed. This data allows us to clarify and confirm the line of contact. Next, Krasny Liman and Linovka. We are following the line of contact. Russian troops are here. They are displaying Russian flags at 2 points. Right here and here are Russian flags. On your screen, servicemen of the armed forces of the Russian Federation raise the flag of the Russian Federation in the northern part of Ilinovka and confirm control of this part of the settlement by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Here in this section of the front, let's move on. Konstantinovka, Rusinyar. We are walking along the line of combat contact. There has been a significant advance by Russian forces of about 3 kilometers, according to geospatial data, from this forest belt. On your screen is the forward position of the Russian armed forces at the clay quarry. The Ukrainian armed forces have been shelled. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Let me repeat once again. Please subscribe to Max. We are 280,000, but only 600 are active. Don't unsubscribe from Telegram. I hope that we'll be able to provide you with information on both of these social networks. There. And please subscribe to Rutube, the main video hosting platform. Video updates are released on all 3 platforms every day. Thank you. Goodbye.